Attention, all curious minds, innovators, and trendsetters. It's time to pause, lean in, and get ready for an extraordinary journey as we dive deep into the fascinating realms of life, technology, entertainment, and business. Let's explore, learn, and grow together. Brace yourselves, for the next thrilling episodes of Hipther Talks is about to take off. Counting down from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here we go.
Hi everyone, Zoltan here. We're back again this week with the Hipther Talks podcast. Today we have two special guests, and this has become a habit for us, having podcasts with two guests, which makes double the fun. So today I have Katri Delimoge and Hanno Ahonen, both co-founders at the Center of Positive Influence, which sounds really nice. And today we're going to talk about the unwrapping of the gift of being human. But before we dive into the questions, I would like to invite my guests to say a few words about themselves and their company and how they get started and so on. So, Katri, let's start with you.
Hi, Zoltan. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having us. And yes, myself and Hanno have given birth very recently to a baby that we have named the Center of Positive Influence.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Congratulations.
So we're officially parents now together, but we fondly call ourselves also COPIs, or the COPI crew. With the C and with the I in the end, not the Y. And fun fact, in Latin, actually, copia refers to abundance. And we didn't know that before, but when we actually registered our company, then we were like, this can't be an accident. So anyways, that is actually very much to do with our mission statement as well. And we define ourselves with Hanno like a bit like rebels. Correct me if I'm wrong. Definitely.
Absolutely.
And lighthouses at the same time as well for each and every one. That means whether it's individuals, teams, organizations, in their exploration and adventure of living big, being big, and doing big. And Hanno, do you want to elaborate a little bit more what it means?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Zoltan. Thanks for having us. And this is very important human subject that we want to give forward today as well over here. But I think with Katri, actually, we fell in love with each other about 2 or 3 years ago when we started to do lots of projects together. I was working in the relocation agency as the CEO of it, and Katri was doing HR director. People operations director. Sorry, she doesn't like the HR part.
I know, my blood pressure was going, but thank you so much. You're correct.
So yeah, and for COPI, as Katri also said, that we really want to empower individuals, teams, organizations through this kind of a tailor-made organizational design, and also these kind of workshops, coaching. We have also mentoring sessions. So just a large scale contributing something back to the world.
All right. Yeah, we met Katri earlier this year in Riga, actually. And yeah, I know that she hates the term HR.
Okay, so you already are known of that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for the great introduction. So let's dive into the questions then. So my first question is that what does being truly human mean to you in the context of your personal and professional life? Katri, let's start with you.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what? I just realized, Zoltan, actually, I think you're the first person who has actually asked a question like that. We keep talking about it a lot, right? So thank you so much. Great question. And funnily enough, we had a very similar discussion with Hanno yesterday. So I'm very excited Hanno can elaborate in that sense as well, because he's someone I really think in that context being truly human. But very simply answering your question, I think truly human sounds very simplistic. In the answer, it means being a human being in all of the roles in our life. And I find it very often like fascinating, people coming out of work, whether it's like the virtual meeting, virtual work, or, literally from the office with a heavy sigh and saying, I can be myself now. I can be a human. And it's like literally taking off the work persona cape and hanging it up and transforming into being a human being. And I'm always very intrigued to understand, but why is that? Why can't we be having the same roles in different parts of our life? Where is the stereotype of being professional is not human coming from? And actually, it got me thinking, having spoken to very different people all over the time, I sort of asked them, if someone asked you what professionalism means to you, what are the first adjectives that come to your mind? And funnily enough, I saw a trend there. First of all, they said professionalism means someone who knows it all. Nobody knows it all. So that already in essence means that it's not human, right? Secondly, in a professional context, it's unprofessional to show emotions, that you're always very calm, like very balanced. But again, we're human beings. We're emotional beings. So asking someone to be unemotional all the time is not human. Then also being able to work like all time around the clock, 24/7. I mean, that's not human. We can't do that, right? And, and also multitasking all the time. Our brains are not wired to multitask. I mean, we can do it for a period of time, but again, that is not human. So I think today we should actually challenge the whole concept of what professionalism in practice and actually in its definition means, and bring more human into that. Hanno, and yesterday we had a similar kind
we had so heated conversation. I mean, like, because we get so, sometimes we're not like reinventing some sort of a bicycle here, people. I mean, like,
it's right in front of us.
Yeah, like some sort of like a physics or like, I don't know, it's not that difficult. I understand that people come from different places, and I can't assume that what this truly human means to different people from, like, I don't know, different cultures, different organizations, different communities, right? But the essence stays the same. We go to bed and we wake up in the morning, and in between, this is just the pseudo, parts that we're always talking with Katri. It's like, I mean, this is nothing new, people.
Yeah,
exactly.
But do you know what?
Yeah, go ahead.
We had a really good conversation, and I was mentioning in the beginning as well, when I think of someone who's truly human in all the roles of their life, it's Hanno. It's never like a work persona Hanno. There's never like a person Hanno. And I'm really intrigued. I actually asked him yesterday. I was like, tell me, how do you do that? How you're keeping like Hanno in all the roles of your life? Do you mind sharing a little bit, Hanno? Because we had a good conversation about that.
Sure. Yeah. And I think yesterday when we spoke with Katri, I was actually the first time I was like, yeah, I mean, my lines are super blurry. Like, what am I professionally? I don't have like an armor. I go in, I don't have like, 8:00 when I leave the house, that I leave some sort of like a coat of being at home, like this truly human, and then going to the professional world and changing that. It has been difficult. Don't get me wrong. I've had, that also shows my vulnerability, being really honest, because I know that I've been called out as a head of a company that I'm too friendly. Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. So maybe later on we can like discuss a little bit more about it as well. But pretty much what it was that I'm too friendly, that I'm being kind, nice, empathetic, and courageous. Naive, maybe, yeah. So I'm a softie, right? And this is not the leader qualities that we're looking for specifically. If we also take like the cultural side, I mean, now we're really deep inside, I mean, Estonian culture, then the professional culture is different and the expectations are a little bit different. So it's been difficult for me. I'm being really honest, because I'm like, okay, like maybe I'm not a good leader then, because they tell me, right? am I too nice? But like, if I'm not too nice, am I losing my identity? But my identity is everywhere. It's not like I have a different identity when I go to the office, right? So
it's not like you are Clark Kent and then
turning
into Superman.
It's impossible. Yeah. And I think like the one thing as well that we discussed with Katri, just a little bit like with this professional or personal life, we're talking about this like work-life balance, right? It's out there like all the time. But for me, or for us at least, when we chatted about it yesterday, like balance is something that it's like balanced, right? But it's never going to be balanced. So why are we given this kind of this kind of like a concept even, which is not reachable? So I actually use it, and maybe it's my persona and this truly being human. I'm in a symbiosis, I'm in a symbiosis with those two. There's many different versions, don't get me wrong, right? There's not only like personal and professional, but symbiosis, I think it's a better word. So because
people need to understand this and adapt it to their life. Otherwise, it's just going to be the same thing all over and again.
Yeah. Totally.
And also, we have these like ladders and everything that we're climbing constantly, but this is just a social concept. Somebody told us, maybe I be I don't know, we chatted even with Katri, maybe I want to be the best cashier. I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to be a manager, right? But anyways.
All right. So let's also talk about soft skills as essential human skills. So how do you guys perceive the traditional view of soft skills in the business world?
Oh gosh, you get me going here now.
Katri can give you a little bit of we were just on that subject as well, so she can give a little bit of a history of it as well.
Absolutely. And I know that is probably not the right way to go about that, but hey, I said we're rebels. So Zoltan, before we dive into that, what's your sort of like conception when someone mentions soft skills? What comes into your head? What does it make you feel?
Especially today, after we just launched our first LinkedIn audio event with many technical problems, I think soft skill means being friendly, being able to connect with others. In my term, it's something that comes naturally, should come naturally, not be affected by any other things.
Yeah. So you're a fan of soft skills. Do I understand?
Yeah.
Sort of like it works.
Yeah.
Right. You're our kind of human.
Okay. Nice. We're in a safe space now, Katri.
We're in the safe space. That's all good. Okay. Then before I dive into that, I'll make a little sort of like humble proposal, like regarding sort of like how we're even calling the soft skills. Like maybe we could also start referring to these as human or humane skills rather than soft skills. So if that's okay, I rather use that term, like going further. Everyone's nodding, so I go by that. But maybe just a little bit history here as well, like where the term and the idea of soft skill is coming from. And drum roll, it's actually coming from US Army. So going back in 1960s, end of 1960s, beginning of 1970s, US Army sort of like coined the term soft skills. And that was sort of like to balance out the hard skills. And actually, the original meaning of hard skills was referring to anything where the man had to use some kind of machine. And anything that was sort of like out of machinery or needed like a human input was referred to as soft skills. But what did the US Army actually really fast figure out as well is that you can be an expert in any machine usage. And obviously that is super important as well. But, where the wins and victories and medals are coming from are very often in the soft skills. Because at the end of the day, when you're strategically planning, even, like how you're going to achieve your goals, how you're getting people together, how you're motivating and how you're inspiring them. I mean, machines can't do that. And we can't do it usually with the usage of machines, which means that we really have to go back to being human and using these humane skills. So this is sort of like my take again. But again, I have to say that today we're in the world where very often soft skills are seen as something that is pink and fluffy, and very often has a notion of being a weakness to that. Yeah. But when we're looking like all the data, there's so many surveys and research out there, which is actually backing up that what drives very often the business. I mean, yeah, hard skills are definitely up there as well, but we can't do that without having these human and humane skills.
Exactly.
Hanno, yeah. Hanno, what's your take?
Yeah, I think we're also a little bit with organizations and leadership skills when we're talking about leaders. It's most definitely overlooked, as Katri said, right? And yet again, I go back to like at the beginning when I said, we're not reinventing the wheel here. And these human skills are actually giving the revenue growth at this point. And also because of the world that has changed completely. I mean, we are in the world today that we probably didn't even figure that we would be ever, right? Also what the organizations want and also what you as an employee want, this relationship has completely, drastically changed. And the emotional intelligence, has brought in, right? And I think with the human skills, yet again, like I don't know why they're undervalued. Why am I a soft leader when I call or when I say that I'm vulnerable, for example? Why is it that like, okay, I will be probably dismissed, like, I don't know, like 5 or 4 people out of 10? Mm-hmm. I don't know that.
Yeah.
It's a strange world.
It is, but strangely interesting at the same time as well. And Hanno, remember we also spoke that despite all the data being out there, yeah, and very often even being put out to, CEOs, CFOs, the C-level, it's still like, yeah, but it's still not important.
Yeah, and I think also, since with Katri we're in the people operations field, right? And this subject usually, we are maybe the people the most that talk about it. We are open and vulnerable about it, right? But then we've also thought if we put data behind it so that the CFO or a CEO would understand us, right? That there's actually value there, there's revenue growth there, then in some of the cases, I know that Katri also has an example that, they still say no to you. Mm-hmm. They're like, nope, let's go back to marketing. Let's go back to sales. Like I throw in 50K and I get back like 100K. That makes sense for me, right? But yeah, this subject, for some reason, I don't know. So we've been actually thinking, we're like, because a lot of times people operations are the underdogs in the organization. Let's call it that. and like, is it the person who is giving the message, is the problem there? I don't know.
So yeah, hypothetically, can you imagine if CFO came with all the data and said, innovation, productivity, the revenue, that's actually coming from people being engaged and empowered and, all these kind of things. Would it fly differently? I don't know. And maybe that's something to try out. So, we're throwing that question out there. So all the C-level people out there, that's a question, interesting for us to hear more about. What it would take.
Yeah, we're curious. We're super curious about it because we don't have an answer and it frustrates the hell out of us.
Yeah, let's see if they reply, especially since you guys are coming to our event next year in Prague and in Tallinn. We will have many C-level executives there. Let's see if they reply live then.
Happy to have that chat.
Yeah. So guys, can you share some a personal story maybe where kindness or vulnerability played a key role in your professional success?
Mm-hmm. Hanno, do you mind?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go.
You go first.
Okay, cool. Where do I start? I mean, that's the story of my life. But hey, I'll share a story actually, which is maybe not so recent, but still recent enough. And there's obviously a reason I'm still talking about that. So going some years back when COVID hit the world. And obviously that was something that I believe today saying nobody was really ready for, right? There were, the organizations, the world as a whole, there was no guidelines, no playbooks, no rules. So what do you do? And I was working at a fintech organization at that time. And obviously, we very fast also supported our people going remote. And we had a very international team. Many people among them were also those that had been recently relocated. So they hadn't yet also established this social network or socially integrated in Estonia. And I remember it was the month of February, March. It's a dark time in Estonia. So not knowing anyone, like being in a really dark place, it's a scary world. But I remember, people going home and myself also going home at the time. I think the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was literally going in autopilot. I didn't sleep. And I had my Slack on all the time. So people could ping me anytime. And they did ping me a lot. And many of the conversations, interestingly, it wasn't about work or goals or performance or any of that. They were actually very humane conversations. And the questions that came popping up were related to, is our business going to be okay? What does it mean for us? Is the world going to end? Very sort of big questions as well, sometimes even philosophical. And I remember being in these conversations and always thinking, as a professional, if I go by those sort of the standard traditional professional approach, I could put the hat on and sort of give you all these non-meaningful answers, yeah, it's going to be okay, yeah, we have all the answers figured out.
Keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep it going. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, you know what? Crap that. I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to be really vulnerable and humane. And I was actually sitting in these conversations. I was like, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honestly going to put myself out there. I don't have the answers. I am scared as hell myself as well. I don't know what's going to happen, but there's one thing that I know for sure is that we have an amazing team. We have great people on board, and we're going to do our utmost to actually figure that situation out. And I'm telling you that during these times, our team's engagement was the highest ever. The productivity levels was skyrocketing. There was zero turnover. People was performing like never before. And the feedback that came back after the storm sort of started calming down, people writing to me and said, thank you for not being the head of people, but thanks for being a human being and putting yourself out there. And that was super powerful. It was an eye-opener.
Mm-hmm. It's a good story.
Yes.
She's a really good storyteller, by the way. My story is a little bit different, okay? I'm going from a different angle. I know that this vulnerability, because I've done a lot of recruitment projects, and I'm actually working on one right now as well. And how I approach these interviews, I actually, first of all, I am showing my vulnerability to the candidate. And I'm actually starting always with the interviews, and I actually tell my life story, why we're even here, why are we talking with each other, so that I'm not giving this kind of a power game like usually, right? The company will win and the candidate is somewhere here, we'll say you're our puppet and we'll do whatever we want with you, right? So this is also showing that human side of myself and showing the vulnerability there. And absolutely fabulous results. Really, really, really beautiful forward. This everything, the emotion that I came out of it, and also, you can actually make a difference in recruitment, as I always say. And these are those spots that, if you show also that humane side of yourself and the vulnerability, that's also makes you courageous. And people are not used to with that.
Yeah, some may, but in some cases, some may feel uncomfortable with that.
Absolutely. I mean, this is also a lot of.
You need to sense it.
Absolutely. So this is a skill that I've just come out, me as of a persona. I also have ADHD, so I reflect a lot. In my head, I have 25 Hannos talking right now when I'm talking with you guys. So I think this is something amazing. I know that as earlier said, also, like, I don't have a different version of myself. I don't even know what my different version is, right? So I think, and we love to be outliers. I mean, like, we love to be awkward. I love to be awkward. I'm not always right. I mean, I can't do everything correct. I don't know all the answers. I don't know, like, what is and what is not, but at least I can create this environment for everyone else to cultivate and really, get the growth and then get the max out of it.
Well, so the 100 Zoltans in my head are now very curious about if you guys have seen some tangible impacts, or have you experienced them when these human skills are prioritized in a workplace?
Mm-hmm. Obviously, Hanno, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think, like, the one thing is that because one of the companies that I work for, and I was the leader for it, we were proud of the essence that we have the most personal service out there. And I know that that's how we also got to know with Katri, with each other, and we were hunting it down. And we were the market leader on there, right? So all of this vulnerability and all of this came to the consultants, how we give the service to the people out there, because we did relocation, right? And at the end of the day, like, this was an interesting thing that I got about like 2 or 3 emails at the height of it, because what we had as a team and the vulnerability that we had, it started to like grow outside of our organization. And I actually had people contacting me, working in people operations. They were like, "Hey, you're doing something amazing. I've heard that the environment is absolutely fabulous. You're doing something different. You're doing a legacy. You're doing it, the courageous, kind, and awkward way. And I want to be part of it." Like, when you hear that, you're like, I think I'm doing something right.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally can back that up, Hanno. Obviously, you did an amazing job, and you're a brand of that as well. So it's been always an amazing experience to work with you. So I'm grateful for that. As for myself, absolutely. I mean, obviously, on top of the story I just shared, like how it actually had a direct impact on the business and organization. And obviously, as an individual to myself, as a human being, it was such an eye-opener in that sense. But I've always also established my teams very much knowingly and building sort of like these values or competencies in as part of that as well. I give you an example. Like kindness. By the way, I've got a nickname. I've got even a cup from some of my teams, and I've got awards. Like, I'm known as Kind Katri, but I tell you later, kind is nothing to do with nice, right? So it's actually the ability to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, but it's being open, but how you're being open. And that's very much the mentality that I was very much ingrained in my teams. And as a ripple effect, it goes to the organizations as well. People actually starting modeling or being inspired or trying out like different kind of behaviors. But one of the samples, like one of the roles, I actually took over a team, and there were like 4 people there. Who were sort of like officially a team, but they weren't really a team, right? So we started doing like weekly stand-ups in our people team. And it was like every Monday. And I was like, okay, we're not like just having that we go there and talk about the work. And come on, we need to get the people together, right? So I was like, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm totally going to put myself out there. And I started every stand-up by basically talking about like all the things that I had got really wrong. And I was like, it's not even a risk, but they might think I'm the most incompetent leader because every week I'm getting something wrong, but that's fine. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to show that I'm a human being. And I think about like 3 or 4 weeks, it was like monologues. They were just sitting in the room and looking at me. And I was like, I wonder what's happening in their heads. And I did ask them, and it's like, yeah. But I did start noticing, like after a period of time, they started having these conversations. They actually started talking about these things as well. And we built a winning team. And when you have a winning, like a people team, you're pretty much a winner. And I mean, what the impact also for the rest of the organization is. Like we had people like modeling the same approach as well. So very, very tangible. And obviously directly related to retention, productivity, and engagement. And that again to creativity, innovation, and revenue.
Yeah, and I actually remembered like one really vivid example as well. And yet again, like it's a little bit different of an example since we were dealing with people and we were relocating. So we're supporting them coming to Estonia, right? And the vulnerability and the friendliness and the kindness and the empathy that we were giving to the people and helping them. We even had a situation where one of the families, they had a 2-year-old kid. And, you know, when you're moving to a new country, you need to like go shopping, you know, it's really stressful. You have a 2-year-old, like how do you do everything at the same time? So we offered, be like, one of the consultants said, hey, I can actually babysit your 2-year-old. You guys can go shopping. But do you understand the relation? I mean, like, and they said, of course, they said yes to it. But we know each other only like by that point about like maybe 3, 4, 5 months. But you are trusting your 2-year-old with me while you're going to go away. I mean, huge, right? Huge impact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can relate to like when we are traveling abroad for hosting conferences, we usually travel by car because we have 2 dogs that we take with us. But we also have now 4 cats who stay at home. So yeah, it was like that with handing the keys to the house to a total stranger to go feed them every day, having access to everything in the house, basically. So yeah, you can just start and trust people. And like I said earlier, you need to sense these things somehow. So, which leads me to the next point about the unconscious bias and conscious awareness. Could you guys discuss an unconscious bias you discovered in yourselves and how you work to become more aware of it and maybe tackle it somehow?
Mm-hmm. Sure. First of all, I was just doing like recently some kind of research because, you know, it seems like the unconscious bias list is like growing bigger and bigger all the time. I think I stopped looking at some point because it's really scary that it's like, oh my God, it's a scary thing. Like we have like, you know, hundreds of different biases, like how are we going to live? But according to that recent research, I think it's close to 200 or 180. So yay, it's very easy being a human being. But in answer to your question, I've been totally guilty of the halo and horn effect, which in essence means, you know, it's someone acting or behaving in a certain way that sort of in your head defines them as a result of that being competent or incompetent. And I give you an example, you know, having a very long history in everything people. I've worn all the T-shirts. I used to be very actively involved also in talent acquisition and recruitment. And when there was also the time where you could still touch people, I mean, handshake people, not touch people as a talent acquisition person. That's really wrong, right? Handshake people. That was a long time ago. Then that was, I had sort of like a very strong, this halo and horn effect bias was like, you know, when someone comes and they have this very limp handshake and they don't look into your eyes. And I was like, this person can't be professional and competent, and they're probably like lazy and, you know, not a good problem solver and stuff like that. And then, you know, someone coming and looking into your eyes and being really confident and having this strong handshake. And I was like, yeah, they are the person. How wrong at times I have been. Obviously, I've had people with very limp handshakes who have turned out to be really amazing professionals and vice versa. But that was very strongly the unconscious bias that first snapped, you know, sort of popped into my head. So how I worked through that was always like, I'm having that. Okay, I'm going to snap out of that. And now I'm going to ask myself, is that how I'm feeling at that moment? Is that rational and justified? And I've got a little approach that for every limp handshake, I'm trying to think at least like 5 sort of like positive things about the person, at least 5. And I put myself again vulnerably out there. Like I want to be positively surprised. I actually want to be wrong in these situations. And I don't want to determine my decision just based on the handshake. So yeah, this is my unconscious bias out there. Hanno, what's yours?
No, yeah, I think like the one thing Katri was also correct. I mean, just the understanding at the first half, yet again, being human, it's part of us, right? I mean, I'm still stepping into those potholes. I know that Katri is doing the same.
All the time.
Yeah, like, I mean, all the time, but just having the consciousness and seeing it, I think that's the first, of course, the step. And then I think also this will be like something, if somebody's starting to, you know, kind of take the first steps of recognizing it, I think this is super, super important. And my example of my biases, Katri will like start laughing.
I love that one.
No, anyways, this is like the second time that I'm telling it to like the wider crowd.
So courageous. Thank you for sharing.
So anyways, I had a conference some time ago, and I went to a conference of sign language. And I was representing an NGO, and I was talking about discrimination. You know, me, I'm also gay myself. So like I'm part of the community, diversity. I mean, like I'm living, I love it. I mean, everything about it. And I went to this coming from our world, right? Where we use words, where we have the language, when we understand what the sentence structure is. And oh, how wrong was I about all of it, going into it. And, you know, when you have this presentation, I think it was 45 minutes long as well. So that's like a pretty long time. And yet again, you're kind of reflecting, you're seeing like where the things are going, you're taking the temperature check, you're asking questions, nothing is landing. Nothing. And then I'm like, oh my God, like what is happening? I mean, like, and then I looked at the time, I was like 30 minutes to go. and
the scary part.
Yeah, like crazy, right? I mean, like, and usually I would like test have turned like red and like wanted to like hide somewhere. But this time I was like, you know what? I mean, this is already messed up anyways. So let's have fun with it, right? Because it looks like, I mean, like I'm not going to crawl myself out of it. And sometimes also when I go to stage, I actually, just to make yet again the bias, like from a flip side, I actually sometimes go with high heels.
Okay.
Just to show the spectrum, you know, and also like, are you going to dismiss me just because I'm a CEO wearing high heels and I'm presenting you something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the same thing that I did over here. So I was like, hey, I can relate, you know, like we're all diversifying and like all of this crowd. No, nothing. And then I had also like these games, you know, like slido.com, like a question and they can answer like on their phone, completely messed up. Then also I had like a video, you know, and I was like, we're doing already good because we have the subtitles there, right? We don't need to worry about anything else. They can read. I mean, they have eyes, right? And then I found out, I didn't know that. I thought that sign language is the same like English and Estonian and I don't know, Czech or like German, right? But it's not. Like if they, I always give this like example. I don't know, you want to tell somebody like, hey, please sit down to this white chair. They say, sit, chair.
Yeah,
they don't have any of these words, like they don't have any of the sentence structure. So it's completely different. So anyways, on this video, like all of this text, I mean, like it was so foreign to them. They didn't understand like most of it because it was like the words like paragraph and law and like, you know, some really, really hardcore stuff in there, right? And I had two even translators in the front. And one of them was like, you know what, F this. I'm not even going to try. She literally like put the hands down and stopped. And then I didn't even think about it because I didn't have voice on the video, but like the translators were in front of me, in front of the stage, right? So you cannot translate like this.
Yeah.
And then like one of the people were like doing like this. Of course, it means something to them. So I was like, I don't know what it even means, but like then I like suddenly started to like, I was like pulling out rabbits from the hat. Literally, I'm not joking. I was doing like, you know, doing this walk on the stage. We're like, you know, let's just see what happens, right? Because I mean, I can't do anything wrong anymore. So anyways, I think, you know, coming from our worlds, it was such an eye-opening in so many levels. I called to Katri, I was like giggling, but at the same time I was like, oh my God, I messed up royally today. I thought that I'm this like diversity person and DEI, and I'm like living it and loving it, right? But I didn't know how to communicate with people from the sign language community. You know, I came with my bias from our world.
Yeah, it's that's a very strange thing, by the way, which is good. It's not just about people with sign language. I think it's people living in different countries, having different culture, having different civilization.
Definitely.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many like different layers, right? And then we sometimes, as I said, like we just jump into it, go with our world, and then it's like, maybe this is not the place.
Yeah, and you're living in an interesting part of the world, Estonia, because we've seen that when we travel to host our conference in the Baltics, every time when we have people from Estonia, Latvia, wow, we are coming from Eastern Europe, which is totally different. And you guys were also part of this communism and everything, but it's a totally different world. The perception of people is totally different. It's very open. We like it. When we travel there, we usually have great memories coming back. If you would do the same speech in this part of the world, you don't need people with sign language. Even if you had translation, they would be acting the same way. So don't worry about it. So,
That's good
guys,
to know.
how do you think about these unconscious biases shaping our professional interaction and decisions? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm actually going to build on something that Hanno mentioned briefly as well, but they're actually integral parts of us as humans. It's how we behave, how we decide on things, how we also come across as human beings. But obviously, the idea is not to eliminate them, because otherwise we will just again stop being human, right? It's impossible. But it's more being more conscious of the unconscious biases, and on a regular basis just going back and asking yourself, like, why I'm feeling this way. Is it rational? Is it justified? Maybe I just need to take a moment and sort of like think, like, is there other alternatives to that as well? But in a business context, I've seen there are quite a few biases that I have observed that can have quite a detrimental impact. For example, one of them is confirmation bias. I used to work with a CEO, amazing visionary, but with a very strong confirmation bias as well. So what it meant was basically someone who has a confirmation bias is, they have their beliefs, and no matter what kind of data you bring to them, they sort of like, the mind is made up. So every time they can like, yeah, let's go to launch this product, but everyone kind of do the market research and analyzes and all this kind of thing. So everyone started working, like hardcore working. And they came back very often with all the data proving that it should be involved. I mean, it's a great idea, but maybe it's not the right time. And it was like, yeah, but, it's still going to be amazing, and every time, even the questions they asked were very much to serve their beliefs. So they were very guided questions. But what they did was actually they started having like personal coach. And they defined the sort of like challenge they were working on, like being more open-minded to different perspectives rather than let's get rid of confirmation bias, because it sounds like you have a diagnosis already, right?
Yeah.
So it was a very painful road, but obviously that was the only way actually for the organization to survive in that sense as well. Because if you keep doing constantly decisions like that based on the beliefs, I mean, we have an almighty God, but there has to be data behind that as well, then it can be detrimental at the moment. So this is something I witnessed. But again, it's not to get rid of that. It's how you learn to live with that and actually being more conscious of this.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really great point yet again that Katri, you're coming. And I think just to add here, I mean, it has a significant impact in our business world, right? Because it can lead into discrimination, exclusion, whatever might come, all the ugly might come out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yet again, like just recognizing, living it, that it's part of you. and observing, dealing with them without like going too crazy about it. But like, Zoltan, do you, just curiosity, have you ever come about with like unconscious biases like in your own world, or are you guys talking about it like in gaming and tech? Like what is have you ever had a
not in gaming and tech, not really. It's part of the discussion in terms of RG for responsible gaming. There's also talks about it because there's an unconscious bias coming from the regulators in terms of licensing as well, in terms of adoption of new laws. Yeah, it's not much talk about it. That's why even the next question would be something which would approach that.
Well, this is really interesting. I mean, like, because yet again, we've spent quite a lot of time talking about unconscious biases lately with Katri, and we've also, given in a conference or a seminar, kind of talk about it. And being really honest with you, yet again, it just didn't land that well.
Yeah, we see a lot of unconscious bias as an events organizer, especially having these boutique style conferences. We see it at the companies who are maybe not going to come to our conference because it's too small or stuff like that. They never been there to see it themselves. So yeah, it's we can see it. Nobody's addressing it.
It is indeed a very uncomfortable, and it requires one to be vulnerable. But it's always very fascinating as well when people say, "Oh, we don't have that problem." It's like, absolutely, you're defining it already as a problem. But if you define it as an opportunity for me to be more open-minded about that, that's already quite a different approach to that. Because at the end of the day, we are all biased in some way. It's just how we tackle it.
And that's a good thing that you asked this, Hanno, because the next question is about what strategies can individuals and organizations employ to recognize and address these biases.
Sure, and I think one of the biggest thing is that I also carry on and carry out myself is just being curious. And not having the fear in the curiosity, meaning that when you're curious, that you're like, oh my God, like this person is different, like what it means for me, what are they going to take away from me, how I need to change, what identity do I need to, no, focus on them. This is like, focus on them, get the information, have an open conversation, be curious, like deeply curious, not just ask like, hey, how are you doing? But like, how are you really doing? How is your life? Like, what are you doing? How is all of this, like the work and life again, like the symbiosis, how is it working for you? How is your, like, I don't know, 8 to 5 or when you go home, like what do you like to do? Stuff like that. And just to be open to be wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that is also okay. And then I think, asking these questions, why do they believe? What is it? How they are acting? Why? I know that Katri is a master of asking why questions about everything.
So, the pain in the backside, hey.
so asking that why, and like, is it where you're coming from? Is it also justified or is it rational? Just being open to that. And I think second thing that I can like maybe also bring out is being empathetic. And sometimes what I also say is that we necessarily don't need to understand where people are coming from, but just have the empathy that they're also human. They're also working on this, walking on this earth like you are. So there's already value, and there's also a conversation, and there's already one point of contact that you can spar with yourself because you're a human, I'm a human. We have something to talk about. And plus, if you're talking about something more like specifically, I mean, there's a lot of trainings out there. There's a lot of unconscious bias trainings out there, and that you can deal with. You can, teach your teams and then your organization as well, and have these diverse hiring practices. I know that, like Katri, you have a story. I know that you've been talking in Culture Brain. You've been talking about this. I think one of the biggest companies, they are doing something different about that as well, right?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of practices out there, and I'm going to share like a very practical tool as well. But I just want to build quickly on what Hanno mentioned regarding the empathy in that sense as well. And I just want to sort of emphasize that we don't need to experience everything ourselves. Sometimes we just have to also accept that people have different experiences. And if someone has experienced something that is different to us, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist or it can't happen, you know? So that is just a very basic kind of thing. But there's actually a sort of like a very cool tool. Obviously, I shared about like one limp handshake and having the 5 positives to that and being like open to be mistaken, because that's a mindset as well. But there's actually a very cool tool, but it does require an environment that is psychologically safe. So the foundation has to be there. But I really love that. It's called Purple Flag. It's been developed by Kim Scott. Ever heard about that? Like the tool?
No.
Zoltan? Okay, cool. Then I'm gonna
The mission is not ending yet.
So basically, just a few words. Kim Scott has been a coach for many different CEOs in Silicon Valley, like also the big ones. And she's the author in the States, based in States, who has issued the books, for example, Radical Candor and Just Work, really highly recommended. But she's worked also on the Purple Flag sort of like method. So what it in essence means that if someone in a work context does something that comes across as biased, then, you know, the team or the organization has like a code word or even like a thing. I'm going to pull out now the purple flag. And that gives the person, you know, like, oh, okay, something that I just did came across as biased or offensive or triggered some kind of emotion. Let's have a conversation about that. And then I can sort of like become more conscious how I communicate, how I decide, ask the questions from the other person, understand them better, and also have an opportunity to also explain where I'm coming from. So that's a very practical tool. But again, it has to be psychologically safe in order to do that, because otherwise, you know, it's chaos.
It's a chaos. Yeah, it will be a hot mess. This is one of the things, that is really, really like clear to understand. And then thanks for pointing that out, Katri.
Yeah. Cheers.
All right. So how do you differentiate between culture fit and culture add in a team or an organization? Because we are going to talk about group thinking and innovation.
Mm-hmm. Hanno, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Actually, this is also something that we're really passionate about, because there's a lot of talk out there, of course, culture fit. We're looking somebody that culturally fits into. We're looking the similarities. We want to make fast decisions. And that's what culture fit at the end of a day it is. It's emphasizing the similarities between us, right?
Yeah.
And it is really good. We've also discovered that, I mean, it's really good in startup environment, because you need to make quick decisions, similar people, things are moving forward. And it works absolutely fabulous in there. But if you're talking about culture add, then this is specifically looking the people that can add something to you that you don't have, right? And with the culture add, there's no better or worse. You know, it's really understanding like, where is your organization at today? Where is your team today? And it can be different. Like maybe for your team, you're in the culture fit stage, or you're in the culture add stage, but actually your organization is in a different way. So you can really utilize it, but understanding where you are, I think yet again, that's the key here that I want to bring out. Katri.
Yeah, absolutely second everything that you said, Hanno. What they have in common is obviously their shared values.
Yes.
And myself coming from like sort of like the startup and scale up scene, then I have to also admit that when I first established my team, I very often go for culture fit, because, you know, we have sort of like the same direction. We operate the same way. It's very efficient. You know, there's not someone constantly on your shoulder or behind your shoulder. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Explain to me. But again, you need that white person who's, in a positive way, nagging you at some point as well, when you actually need to innovate or transform or scale or go on a different sort of like level as a team, as an organization, as a whole. So there's a right time for each and every one of them.
I can totally relate to this. Having when employing new team members, it's that same thing. When you have that person that's always asking the question about a new service or something that we launch, it's good because in a way it also teaches you to explain it better for your customers. So in terms of wrapping it in marketing, it also helps you innovate because you have it in your head. You put it on paper, you launch a product, a service. But when it comes to explaining, you're like, okay, just look at the description that I wrote. No, that Y person that maybe can help you explain it better. So yeah. And which leads me to the next question in terms of positive change. Maybe you guys can share some examples when one of your clients has embraced culture ad and led to innovation or significant positive change. And could you also discuss the concept of cultural value and how it's shaping the modern workplaces?
Yeah,
well,
definitely.
Because Katri, you can start.
I'll go ahead then. Yeah, like I said, like obviously these are very strongly, I'm always strategically thinking about, like in regards to building up my own teams and how it resonates to the rest of the organization. But a success story here is, for example, when establishing, for example, the values for the organization, which are integral part of everything, how you do like the business, how you do the work, how you interact, basically that's how we do things around here. And I remember when I really needed to have the culture ad person in there, because, for example, a word like innovation or like a value of kindness, I'm looking at it from my perspective. I have just my definition, but you can have like 5 people in the room and they can have 5 different definitions to that. And I'm like, I wouldn't even think about that. So that has drastically helped to actually, okay, what are we trying to capture here? What's our way of doing? How we can eliminate as much of subjectivity and make it really concrete, considering like different perspectives. So obviously culture had been like more than valuable in that context at the right time. And when you're doing like strategically big things to get different diverse opinions in there.
Hanno?
Yeah, I think with culture ad, yet again, I have maybe a little bit different of an example, but I specifically one time I recruited into my team. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to see, because I know that I was cultivating a lot on the culture fit. I mean, the background, like I always love that you had a background, either you've been in like an expat or you've been working in like hotels, so you know like how to do and how to deal with people. But then I was like, you know what? I'm going to recruit somebody completely different and I'm going to see what happens. I mean, the knowledge was there, the enthusiasm for what we were doing and the genuosity for it was there. But I mean, it was a challenge. But at the end of the day, I also saw that kind of the profitability for our team, when that person actually left, we lost something and they were mourning. I mean, you do anyways, right? With people. But I really saw, and he pushed me. I was like, what the, I mean, again, he's asking this question. Like, I mean, like, can we just like move forward and like be done with it, right? But he challenged me all the time because he was different. He came from a different world. And I didn't get it the first time. I didn't get it maybe even the third or the fourth time, but the 5th time, I started to understand the value in that. Yeah.
All right. So since we are all about sharing personal stories, I would like to ask you guys if you could share a funny or memorable flop that taught you an important lesson about being human in the business world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely happy to do that. But I just realized we've missed with Hanno a very important thing, culture value. You asked us about that, Zoltan,
yes.
as well.
Yeah, this is our thing. Yeah, we need to talk about it.
This is something like, just very briefly, because actually we're super proud, Hanno, right?
Yeah.
We coined the sort of like the term. So actually the world out there meet culture value. We've already sort of like shared it with some group of people, and it makes sense. So we've developed the whole idea of culture fit and culture ad. And where we're coming from is actually bringing these worlds together. And the whole idea is we don't have to be in extreme in being completely the same, which is culture fit, yeah? That this is where the success is coming from. And we also don't have to be the polar opposites, in order to succeed, but rather making the differences or the diversities and also the similarities work and complement each other, and strategically think like, where are the areas where we need to be the same, and actually which are the areas where we need to be different. That's why, hence the whole sort of concept of culture value and bringing these two together. And I think myself and Hanno are a great example of that. We are completely polar opposites by all the laws of nature, and people would be like, oh God, these two, but we are also so similar. And in order to succeed as a team, we are, and I really think we're a team with a capital T, we need both. And that's why for our team, we're talking about culture value.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I have to completely agree with you. And also, just as a matter of fact, I mean, there's tons of case studies about culture add. And I mean, there's not case studies yet about culture value, but we can change that, Katri, right?
Yeah, totally, we will.
But for the culture add, I mean, so many case studies saying that it will actually boost the morale of the team, and actually that will drive also up your revenue. I mean, this is just a fact yet again. There's like nothing here, and the fact is backing that up as well. So highly encouraged to understand like where you're at and what you're doing, and how you can innovate, and which state are you with your organization.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So funny stories.
Funny stories. Hanno, take it away.
I think, I mean, like the funny story, like my flop still, because I still have a little bit of a PTSD probably with it. But when I went and I did this professional conference, I think this is the biggest flop that I've had for a very long time, and like nothing else even like comes to my memory, because I'm still reliving it. Like when I'm telling it to you, like I'm still like, okay, dude.
Yeah. Thank you for being so vulnerable. For myself, I don't know, funny or a flop. I'd rather say like something that is memorable. And again, like eye-opening in the context of kindness. I used to work with a gentleman, let's call him today Mr. A, and preserve his being mysterious. And I remember that was very many years back. And he always used to come past my table. And I was working as the head of people, and he was always saying like, oh, Katri, you're such a softie. And I was just sitting there, and I was like, and I never asked him, what does it mean? And I was just like, again, with my unconscious biases, creating all the possible scenarios, like, what he could mean. And a few years, fast forward, I was going to leave the company, and he was there with the flowers in his hand, and it was like, Katri, thank you so much for being such a softie. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to just put an end to that. I'm going to ask him, what does it mean, and all these kind of things. So I was really wired up, ready to take the paddle on. And I said, so Mr. A, could you elaborate a little bit more, the softie thing? We've been going around the porridge for so many years, so tell me more. And I remember him looking into my eyes, and he just said, you know what? You're so friendly and so kind, but at the same time, you're so business savvy and strategic, and you do it in such a humane way. So thank you so much for that. And I was like, I didn't expect it at all. I was thinking softly, like a walker, all this kind of thing. And it completely changed the concept. So if anyone calls me softie today, bring it on. I'm a self-confessed softie, so this is all good.
You said in your head, why am I leaving this company? I should stay.
I'm here. You can take the flowers. Right. So that's my story.
Okay, that's good. So what are some of the practical hacks you use to stay grounded and human in your professional roles? Because it's not that easy.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, as we already established at the beginning as well, it is not easy, but it's also easy because we already are. So, so I think just some practical hacks that I'm using, and we actually do it together sometimes with Katri. We go and meditate. Mm-hmm. Hugely helpful. And I've actually heard that from a lot of leaders that they use meditation for for kind of getting grounded, understanding, giving the love out there, being friendly, kind to everybody around you. So I think one thing definitely is that. Mm-hmm. And for me as well, I'm super curious. I'm curious about different people. I'm like, okay, why are you doing it? How are you doing it? And genuinely, yet again, just, I don't know, showing out the interest in there, showing out that you're present, that they also have a value. I have a value. This is an changing ideas. This is not a one-sided flop, right? So I think these are some of the things that I've used. And one more thing. I always say this is that, but in Estonian it's a little bit differently. It's like, I've always loved the idea that when I open my mouth, that then something magical might happen. This is super un-Estonian of me. But I always go into situations, I'm like, oh my God, like there's something, but it's a way of thinking, right? How are you going into it? And I'm building up, like, not the scary parts of it, but I'm building up the curiosity. I'm building up oh my God, I can learn something today. I'm waking up in the morning that something might happen that I'm learning. I don't know, I can talk with Katri, I can talk with you, Zoltan, I can talk with my teams. And but yet again, sometimes it's not valued. In Estonian, even there's a saying that a child speaks only when the chicken pees, which the chicken never pees, right?
Wow. Wow.
Now you know Estonians even better.
So yeah, I think these are some of the stuff that, with the humor aside, but these are some of the hacks that I know that I'm utilizing every day. Yeah.
Katri, any advice for our listeners from your side as well?
Yeah, I've got two very practical ones. I'm very consciously practicing gratitude, for example. So I'm taking actually at the end of every day time to reflect what I am and who I already have grown into. Because so easy it is to get sort of like into the race, like what I could have more, what am I missing, what I could be more of, why I'm not this kind of person. So I'm taking very consciously time to actually celebrate and embrace the journey where I've grown into and be excited where I'm going rather than having this FOMO, like the fear of missing out, and generously expressing that. There's actually, people are not mind readers. Sometimes telling them in real time for meaningfully, like saying thank you, it can change not someone's day, but actually, for a very long period, give them like metaphorically wings. So little things like that, actually being expressive in the gratitude as well. And secondly, I recently listened to an amazing podcast, which was with Brené Brown, talking to Adam Grant in her Dare to Lead series. And there was one sort of like approach or mentality. Oh, it was packed with golden nuggets. I highly recommend everyone to listen. But there was a statement which was made like, I am showing up not to prove myself. I am showing up to improve myself. Mm-hmm. Huge difference, right? So when I'm already putting myself out there, eliminating my ego out of the equation and actually thinking like, it's not about me being right at whatever cost. It's actually getting it right and doing the right thing. That the dynamic is already completely different. And that resonates very much how I also, want to be as a human being, but also everything that I do in different roles in my life. So these are my sort of hacks.
All right. I think, like Katri, we've also chatted about a little bit the concept of, and we utilize it a lot, of the concept of unknown.
Yeah.
Really expanding and extending that, and then also being present and understanding or taking as of a matter of fact that everything is constantly changing. Mm-hmm. Like there's even another great saying from me today, but the famous drag queen has said that if you keep one leg in the future, one leg in the past, then you're pissing on today. I do not want to piss. Yet again, some like this. Anyways, this theme is going on today with me. But anyways, I love that. I mean, and that's also translates into what we are creating with Katri, what we want to give back to the world, that there's a meaning behind there, and just understanding your playfield. Yeah.
All right, so which leads me to the final question about some advices you guys can more advices that you can give to our listeners about embracing humanity in their professional lives?
I think it's actually sort of like eliminating the false fear that being human is somehow belongs to a certain part of our life. And actually being courageous and courageously vulnerable in bringing it into every part of our life. Because, despite all the data, I think today all we have to do is like, rather than saying like it doesn't work, just give it a try. And then you know for sure whether it works or not. But just this little step to know for sure. I think we have to give it a try. That's
a small step.
Exactly.
Completely agree. I think just even like maybe like eliminating, really hunting down and asking these questions, just like being. I mean, just being, accepting, changing, learning constantly, having this curiosity about it. I think these would be the ones that I would bring out.
I love, Hanno, what you just said. I think building on that, I would even say, being more human being rather than constantly human doing. So actually not being busy, constantly doing something, but actually taking the time to being present and just being and reflecting and connecting and being kind and vulnerable to yourself as well.
It's super hard. I mean, like we know it with Katri. I mean, it's super difficult, right? But if you don't take the steps, nothing won't happen yet again.
Exactly. You need to take those first steps. So how can our listeners connect with you guys or follow your work?
Well, Hanno, shall we
Drum
say?
Drum
rolls. So yes, we're just in the process of getting our website up and running. So COPI.agency, check us out. We'll definitely will be active with what we're doing and what we're offering to the world and the success stories and probably at some point also flops because we're collecting these as well out there. Of course, in LinkedIn, Katri Delimoge and Hanno.
Yeah.
And we'll be seeing all of you in Prague in March.
Yeah.
And
in Prague and in June in Tallinn. Exactly. Yes. And and in our description for this podcast, you can find the links towards their LinkedIn profiles, so you can reach out to them. Guys, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
I just hope that our listeners have been human throughout this 1 hour, 1 hour and 10 minutes, which is one of our nowadays usual times for podcasts. So thank you once again, and let's catch up next year in remote places.
In remote places, we will do indeed. Thank you so much, Zoltan. It's been incredibly fun to talk about something that we're so passionate about.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Zoltan, again, and thanks also everybody who's watching and listening to us. And let's make an impact. Let's make a dent into the world, and let's see what happens. I mean, let's go to this road together.
Make sure to share this episode with your friends.
Absolutely.
Have a great day, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
And that's a wrap for this section of Hipther Talks. Thank you for being a part of our journey today. Don't forget to tune in next week for more insights and discussions. Stay connected with us on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and more. Until then, keep exploring and keep growing. We'll see you next time.